to help serve warrants.
Welcome to CTRL ALT Revolt, the not podcast. This is the writing channel. I just did a podcast over at CTRL ALT Revolt, and it was really fun. We had a good time. Oh, I've dropped my chair. You can get a better look at my ugly face tonight. This is the writing channel, and we are going to discuss writing books and publishing books and all of those kinds of things. So welcome to everybody over on Rumble and YouTube and X. I'm not even going to say Twitter anymore. I'm just going to say X. Welcome to CTRL. Oh, the show was delayed and kept moving. How is everybody doing? How is everybody's writing projects? How is everybody's writing week? How is everybody's reading? It's great to see everybody already. Seeing Karen, seeing Leo, seeing Virgil, seeing Earl, a Duthette. Hey, the usual crew of the Murderers Row of the writing channel. It is good to see you guys. I missed you for 2 weeks, as I explained in the CTRL ALT Revolt Substack podcast. Mr. BC Walker, nice to see you back. Thank you, Virgil. It's good to see you back. The Medusa and I were taking a vacation month for our anniversary. So we had just a delightful time, but we did miss everybody, and we talked about you guys. Leo, thank you for supporting the show for $50 for coffee and tacos. We will apply that to carne asada fourthly and willingly. Thank you so much. I usually start off the show with just talking about a couple of things. I usually talk about my own writing, because why would you listen to somebody who's not practicing what they're preaching? And then I usually talk about like a topic that's been of interest to me that I've usually been thinking about while I work out and while I write. I'm like, you know what? I should go share that with everybody. That might be a good thing. And that actually, the topic that I'll talk about before we go to questions, I will say actually came out of some beta readers who were currently going over the next work that I'll be releasing. And I thought, oh, that's a good topic right there. I am working on the lead magnet. I've been working in my writing time this month on the lead magnet for the new series that I have coming out shortly. So what is a lead magnet? One of the audio publishers that I work for, not all of the audio publishers, but one of them actually really enjoys doing lead magnets. Lead magnet is basically, if you're going to do a series, and this is a series of books, this new secret series I have coming out, which I'll be able to talk about shortly. A lot of you are beta reading it, and so you know about it, but I'm just trying to keep the general chatter right down until I have a buy link up that somebody can check out. Leo, thank you so much for gifting subs to people. Please, everybody, enjoy those. Tell me what I should do with those subs. Should I start like a secret club? But the lead magnet is basically an introduction to the fictional world that you'll be writing in. So, for those of you that have read The Secret Project, you understand what that world is. And so basically, I'm developing a small short story that actually it's turned into a 40,000 word novella. So it is not a small short story that people will be able to download for free in both audio and ebook format. And so people, there's certain readers that like to start there, see if the series is of interest, and then they might buy through your series, which, if you do an 11 to 12 book series, can be pretty lucrative. So even if you don't have a third-party audio producer that wants to do a lead magnet, it's something that I highly recommend and that you will enjoy very much doing. Sometimes it's good to write your first book in the series and then go back and write the lead magnet, and perhaps write it from the perspective of like somebody who doesn't know anything about the first book and how to introduce them to maybe one of the main characters, which is what I do in this lead magnet. And that's just a great way to it's a lead magnet. It leads people toward your series. And at that point, you would put it up on your website. You would offer it on your social media feeds to people. And what you would do is you would use BookFunnel to give the ebook away, and you would capture an email address for that. And then a great thing that you can do is when you do launch your book and you want to release the lead magnet first, then you're able to market to those people on day one. And then perhaps they'll come and buy your book, and you will get some good sales on day one, which will begin to get your book sticky inside the algorithm. I just rode 15 miles on the bike. So I had a long day. I did a podcast. I did CrossFit with the Medusa, and she absolutely crushed it. She tells me she's swole now. Well, thank you so much. $10 for coffee and tacos. That is so kind. And 5 gift subs from Leo. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I actually use all the money that goes into the channel to buy coffee and tacos. And then also I pay some things for, there's a lot of little, as you go along in writing, there's a lot of little services that you'll end up subscribing to. That's the best way to say it. You'll have a Wix subscription to build your website, which I'm currently working on a new website. You'll buy a website from GoDaddy. That'll cost you a subscription every year. You might use Genius Links. That'll cost you a subscription. You will probably need to use some kind of mailing service, either MailerLite or MailChimp. Most services are now going to charge you money. So it's nice to have a little income to support that channel and do that. So I truly appreciate that. But that should help you guys also to understand that I was listening to somebody today who was talking. Actually, it was a Backwoods book reviews. Was that him? Or was it Dirtbaggery book reviews? I think it was Jay Canada. And he was saying, what I'm beginning to understand from the podcast that I do, is that there's a lot more to just to publishing a book than just writing a book. And I think we've talked a lot about that in this channel. So, there's going to be some subscriptions. There's going to be paying some contractors, either from artists or to editors, to book formatters. You could even hire a marketer. I don't think there's much more beyond that, but you're going to want to approach this like a business. And so thank you, anybody who is enjoying the advice that I hand out. And so now I'll hand out a little advice that came to me this week when one of the beta readers came back from Mysterion. Whoops, I said the name of the project. Sorry. Let's all forget that I said that. From the secret project I have going on. And they said, I love the book. That's the advice. They love my book. No, the advice that I'm going to come is from another comment they made, which they said, I cannot believe how much lore is in this book. And I love lore. And are you going to explore all this lore? So I think that's like, stepping outside and observing my writing career. And there are things that, listen, there are things that every writer does. You have gifts and you have weaknesses. And if you listen to the readers, whether you like it or not, you'll figure both of these things out. I'm not saying that the first person to jump on and criticize you is right. I'm also not saying that the people who jump on and say, your book changed my life and cured my cancer is right either. I am saying that over time you will, and especially if you make a relationship with your readers, which is a policy I have. I'm not friends with a lot of my peers. Actively, I choose to do that for reasons. But the biggest reason that I give you for that, like I don't go to the conventions, and I don't generally hang out with those guys or do podcasts or anything like that. And they're all wonderful people, and they're just great. But writers don't buy books, readers do. And so I want to have a relationship with the people that are actually engaging with the thing that I wrote. That's more important to me. So I choose readers over writers. And if you take the time to get to know readers, and you take the time, Sergeant Orion helped me be braver, Plumber Dave. That's awesome. I agree with that. These characters in these books that we read, not just my book, like a lot of times they help us to do things that we may not have thought were possible. So that's pretty cool. The getting to know the readers, they will tell you what you're doing well and what you're doing wrong, even if they like your book. More importantly, they'll tell you what your strengths are. And that's kind of on the path to how to find your voice. And you'll hear a lot of like hoity-toity writing programs talk about, finding your voice and things like that. And I think that just naturally comes over time as you write, you develop a voice. I think you can start out imitating other people's voices kind of to find your voice. But over time, especially when you're on a series or multiple series, you kind of just, the novel tells you kind of how it wants to be written. And at the same time, you kind of write in a certain way. Sometimes when I write in third person, I'm almost writing as a character. Like in this new project, I'm almost kind of writing as a character in the book. When I write, Strange Company, well, then that's, and Forgotten Ruin, that's first person. That's Talker and Orion. So I'm going to be writing as them. And so that's their voice. So, so listening to your readers is going to help you find what you're doing right. And when you find what you're doing right, then you want to do that more. And then more people will buy your books. So what this guy said basically is he really loves the lore and that I do in books. And he's really liking this new one that I did. And so I really enjoy creating forward. I think that used to drive Jason nuts a little bit because I was always creating new things. And then Jason kind of I think he took the burden and the responsibility of well, how are we going to manage all these things? And I just have a more well, we will. And Jason has a more we've got to make flow charts and spreadsheets and we've got to keep everything organized. And I think that's really admirable. And there were times that Jason really saved our bacon on Canon for sure. I have a tendency to work a little more loosey-goosey. And now that I'm doing projects kind of on my own, that's kind of the way that I enjoy creating. So I think I'm very, very good at lore. I really like creating stuff and making it up. And I think I always did that, but I formally learned how to do it. And this is the part of the show where I'm kind of giving you some advice about how I do things. And then you can do things. And what we're talking about here is lore and how do you make it and expand it. So if you're writing a science fiction book or you're writing a fantasy book, there's going to be lore. There's going to be world, what they would call in, hoity-toity classes. There's going to be world building, even if it's in space. And you're going to have to make up who lives here and what city's there and what ship this is. You got to make up all this stuff. Some people like that. Some people don't. Some people like it so much they get overburdened by it. They get nervous by it and stuff like that. Some people like it so much, but they don't do it correctly. And I think that's an easy trap. And I think that's a great path to getting overwhelmed by lore. So here's what I learned. I got out of the Army and I knocked around Hollywood and I eventually ended up at an improvisational Jedi school called the Groundlings. And they're really famous. And I auditioned and I got in and I began to learn about improv. And improv is the act of making things up and then working with them. You don't just make stuff up and then not use it. I think that's where lore gets done really badly. And what you would physically do in improv is you would like be doing what they call space work, and you'd have your hands up and you're making it looks like a ball, and let's say it's a ball. Now you've got to do something with that ball. They might come along and throw you a curveball and say, it's not a ball. What else is it? Then you'd have to make up another thing. And they go, what else? And you make up another thing. That's to kind of get you out of yourself, but that's a little more advanced. But mainly is you were playing with the ball. Could be a grenade. You're playing with the grenade. And now what you would have to do is build an acting story around that grenade. And what they called that is explore and expand. And you would have to do it with somebody else. And both of you would have to affirm whatever, hey, Sparky, whatever was made up. And I think you can use that in writing. It's fun to make stuff up, but make sure that you take the time to explore and expand that. What does explore mean? Okay, you make up this cool character. His name is Rex Crumley, International Space Pirate Captain. Okay, well, you're going to explore that. Well, what does that mean? And maybe sometimes lore is very background. You already have two main characters. You have Genevieve and Croker, and they're the rogue and the princess, and they're going to meet Rex Crumley. And Rex Crumley is going to say stuff about his life that could be if you do your lore really, really well, it could be really interesting. He could talk about, well, when I was on the misty planet of the Andarian slave women, people are like, oh, that sounds really cool. Okay, well, you can gloss over that, or we can get into that a little bit. And Genevieve can be like, slave women on Andaria, and now he can start, oh yes, I was in the Pink Castle, and there were all kinds of ivory weapons, and that's the exploring part. In the expanding part, you're beginning, and when you do those things, the lore moves from the background of the story to becoming a part of the story. And what becomes really interesting in doing this is that can actually add to your story and even change your story. And if you're brave enough and you're cool enough, you'll let it happen. If you fight it, you'll try to shut it down. And you might be leaving some really good stuff in the background. And that's the best way that I can try to explain the difference between good lore and bad lore. Bad lore stays in the background and people see it, and it's as bad as a cheaply painted prop. Do you remember the really old cool Star Trek sets and mainly the first season, The Cage, and they would land on the planet and they used the big matte paintings, and there would be like a weird space factory in the background or something. A lot of those old space movies really went on really cool. And didn't you sit there and watch that background and think wow, I'd like to go look. I wonder what that is. And they were brilliant enough to kind of leave it a little enigmatic, and but it made you as the watcher kind of invest more in the show. I want to know what that is. I want to get into that. Bad background is two cruddy actors coming out and they've painted a farm and a cow, and they're doing farm jokes. But the cow has been painted on the wall, and at no point do the actors ever interact with the cow, because even they know the cow is just painted onto the curtain. You know what I mean? So good lore leaves the background and it comes forward into the story. And the way that you do that is you explore and you expand. You allow Genevieve to ask Rex Crumley about the slave planet. Now you are forced to talk about that slave planet. And so you take what you came up with, it's an Andarian slave planet full of women, and you start making stuff up. But then you allow the other characters, you allow that to affect the other characters. Well, my mother was an Andarian slave, or perhaps the guy had a girlfriend who was on Andar, and now this creates tension between the girl and the guy. Or it could, like, allow the background to come forward into the foreground. So, and what happens is the lore deepens the world. So when that guy wrote to me, he's like, I love all this lore. I want to know more about it. He's expressing that. He, like, not only is he on this adventure, this world is so exciting to it. He's hoping we get around to explaining all these things. And we are going to. So that's just what I wanted to talk about. I think a lot of you are working in fiction genres where you're going to need to do lore. And I think lore can be fun. And I think lore can be daunting. And I think lore can get away from you. And I think lore can hurt your story. I think lore can improve your story. I think that lore can expand your story. So what I'm saying here is it can do both good and bad for you. Exactly. Well, what happened in the Desert Crow? If you use it right, and don't just throw in a cow because it's a farm. If you're going to put the cow in, bring the cow into the story. Or as Edgar Allan Poe put it, if you're going to introduce a firearm into a book, it better be used. You know what I mean? Don't just have the person sit there and not use it and threaten everybody with it. Someone's going to need to get shot. That's kind of how we do this. So I think that's a good little topic for tonight. If you have any questions about it, you can ask me some questions. You can ask me some questions in the chat now, and I'll try to answer whatever we can. You can talk about your current work in progress and let me know how that's going to be. What I will do is I will go over here to the banner, and I will put up a banner link. So if anybody would like to actually come on the show and join me and talk face to face, then we can do that. As soon as
Plummer says, I promised to come back today with the rough draft of the first chapter of my book done to narrate it. ... So I don't know if that's it.
Okay, then let's get you in, Plummer. You promised to come back today with your rough draft, first chapter of the book done to narrate it. Are you ready to go? I'm going to put the banner in here. If you are, come on in and let's read the first chapter, and we will just turn the show over to you and just enjoy yourself. If anybody else wants to jump in and ask a question, you see the link right there. Just paste that into your browser, not the join us part, and that will bring you into the show once you hit the return button on your browser, and you can come on in and talk, and we will have a great time. So I'm getting, yeah, okay, it's ugly. It doesn't matter. Come on in. Ugly's good. The first draft is always ugly. We fix it in drafts 2 through 20. We're waiting for Dave. Let's see. After this week, I actually have to go and do some editing on a partner project with Punchacles, which is our new Space Marine book series. And I also have to start book 2 on the new secret project. Most people are reading book 1 about right now. And then by the end of the year, I have to finish a quote unquote Stephen King novel that I've written for a new publisher. And I'm really excited to share that with you. Over in the Galaxy's Edge fan club the other night, someone noticed that the town of Viejo Verde gets used a lot. And I was able to finally answer that. I said, well, that always, that comes from me. I grew up in a place called Mission Viejo, and Viejo Verde is the fictionalization of that. And the cool thing about this new quote unquote Stephen King book that I'm writing, it's horror, is I now get, like Stephen King had his Castle Rock, Maine. that's my Viejo Verde. And so we'll be able to get into that. Okay, Dave is here. Brother, how you doing? Let me unmute you. Wait. Add to stage.
There we go.
Okay. I'm going to mute me while you talk, so that there's no interruptions from me or anything like that. But so I think this was about 6 or 7 months ago. We went over kind of your chapter, and like we talked about it and helped develop it. And then you were talking, and we said, okay, at the end of July, you're gonna come back and read the first chapter to us. And here you are. You have faith. You have faithfully executed. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it being rough. Don't worry about having to explain anything. I think everybody's really going to enjoy this. And like, no matter how rough you think yours is, my first draft always looks like it's written by a baboon with ADHD who just got into the Chips Ahoy cookies. So trust me. All right, I'm going to mute out. Go for it.
His teeth clacked together as the pod sliced its way through the atmosphere towards the surface of the planet. The planet didn't have a name yet because they had been busy mapping the asteroid belt. However, the name of the planet wasn't on Kaylor's mind. The blood in his mouth was distracting his thoughts outside of the pod. The sound was amazingly loud inside the insulated pod. The chutes deployed, and Kaylor felt his body slam into the harness. Then he felt the descent slide into a controlled descent. Kaylor activated the pod-controlled AI with a toggle switch inside his helmet. "Landing location," Kaylor shouted with the bone-conducting receiver on his jaw. A whisper would have been detected. With the adrenaline pumping through his veins, whispering wasn't something he was currently capable of doing. The pod was still streaking towards the planet's surface at incredible speed. "Landing software has been overridden by jamming equipment. I'm unable to take back control of the landing sequence." The pod AI continued. "Trajectory of the landing sequence is toward the signal. The source of the signal is on the display." Kaylor had time for a curse before his pod hit the ground. He felt his head swing backward. Then he lost consciousness. Kaylor woke up inside the pod, which was upright and intact. He flipped a toggle switch inside his helmet, and the body harness released. Double vision plagued him as he made his way to the main computer. He typed in his authorization code, and the interface came to life on the wall of the pod. He tried to turn the emergency distress signal on, but a notification popped up that the signal was being jammed. Useless pile of... Kaylor leaned sideways against the wall and slid to the floor. Adrenaline was still racing through his veins. However, he was aware that his ship of over... However, he was aware that his ship of over 500 passengers had just been gutted by some kind of ship-killer missile. Many of his friends and many families were burning up as the ship fell towards the planet. Perhaps others made it to their life pods, and maybe many had made it out of the ship alive. He decided to lay there for a while, and after a time he passed out on the floor of his life pod. A pair of eyes watched from the surface of the planet at the life pod falling towards his beacon. If he'd programmed the thing correctly, the pod would land right atop the beacon. The Dynasty life pod fell exactly where he intended, and he made camp outside the pod. No sense in poking his head inside. Some trigger-happy asshat might see an opportunity for target practice. No, he would make camp outside of the pod and wait for the single being to exit. He was taken aback by how little the Dynasty life pods had changed in the time since his had crashed on this very planet. The pod looked almost identical to his all those years ago. His had been taken back to the village, and he'd turned it into a home. The pod cracked open, and a young man dragged himself out. He apparently forgot to deploy the stairs and dropped a few feet down into the dirt. He sat up dazed and propped himself on an elbow. He most likely had a concussion, that much was clear by his behavior. He had time to set up his tent and make a fire before the newcomer collected his wits. The coffee had been brewed over the flame. His stage had been set for his story to be presented and deciphered. He took a sip of his coffee and arranged his thoughts. Kaylor woke up feeling warmth on one side of his body. He heard the sound of burning wood crackling. It was a sound he distinctly remembered from his childhood. His father had taken him on a hike in the mountains of Morobe for a weekend. The view of the stars from the clearing on the top of the mountains was majestic. His father had told him that their people had come from the stars, that Kaylor's grandfather was the captain of the colony ship that had delivered them from the dark depths of the emptiness between the stars. Kaylor very well remembered the crackle of burning wood and the hearty smell that rose from the dancing flame. He opened his eyes and saw the stars. It was something he'd not seen in a very long time. It brought him back to the mountain on Morobe in that clearing, learning things that mustn't be forgotten. "You awake yet?" a voice asked. It was a voice that was old and tired. "You've been sleeping for a while." "Where am I?" Kaylor asked, his voice hoarse from the smoke he'd inhaled during his escape to the life pod. He ignored, for the moment, the strangeness of the voice. He had no idea who had asked him this question, but where outweighed the who in the current moment. "That ain't important right now," the old voice answered. "Why you're here is much more interesting." There was a twinkle in the voice, holding some secret within the words. "Why'd your ship come here? I already know what happened and how it happened, but why'd the Dynasty send a ship into the unknown again?" The old man's question seemed disdainful and harboring a deeper meaning. Kaylor rolled onto his side and pulled his legs under himself. He sat on his feet with his knees in the cold dirt. The camp was Spartan in simplicity and typical of an outlander. The old man, however, was what stole Kaylor's attention. He looked to be the oldest man he'd ever seen. The old man had spoken of the Dynasty as a known thing, something he'd been familiar with, perhaps. "This system isn't on our maps." Kaylor knew it was a lame attempt to hide his knowledge of the Dynasty. He chalked it up to a possible concussion he most likely suffered during the crash. Suffered in his crash to the planet. "This system hasn't been mapped by anyone in the galaxy." He saw a change in the old man's posture. It was slight, but he thought he'd noticed a change. "It ain't on the maps because the Dynasty don't want it on the maps. If this system were known, it'd take one pioneer with the freighter and the Dynasty would collapse." There was a harshness in the old man's voice, certainness of the words he spoke. "Who are you?" Kaylor asked, suddenly very interested in the old man. Who was he, and how had he found the pod? Why was he telling Kaylor this, and why was this system so important? There were so many questions he had and very few answers he had received. Suddenly it began to rain. The water droplets came down fat and heavy like a wet blanket that shrouded the camp in seconds. The old man pulled an unseen staff from behind him. It looked to be made of bone with intricate geometric carvings covering its length. There was a cube on top of excuse me. There was a cube at the top of the staff sitting inverted atop the staff, pulsing with a dull blue glow. It was also decorated by carvings, but not made of the same material. It was matte black with a glow coming from inside like a tormented lamppost. He lifted the staff slightly and struck the ground with it. A yellowish glow rose from the top of the cube and stretched upwards and then outward, forming a dome. The rain rolled off the dome as it expanded outward to cover the entire camp. When it halted expanding, it had covered Kalor and the man's tent. Kalor looked up at the translucent shield holding back the rainfall. It unnerved him to see starship-level shielding tech displayed at the end of a walking stick. It took the reactor power of a starship to project that type of shielding. The technology had never before scaled to that size, only the size of a luxury lot that the elites sailed through the stars on. My people gave me the title of Daigensu Kaigan Teisho. Long time ago. You know what that means, kid? The old man asked with dark eyes. It meant emperor. And I was there doing my fragile best not to get my men killed. I was there at the ground on Trinard. I fought above Argus in the Battle of the Twins. His eyes softened. It means emperor. I created the dynasty from 2 colony ships that were barely holding together at the end of the journey. We set out to reach Tau Sentai. The old man looked into the fire as he dragged out the memories from the far reaches of his mind. Days after we launched, an engine malfunctioned. I think it was a Sunday, but it was all hands on deck for weeks, and that's just the first of a long list of problems. The old military man chuckled. We were in for a rough ride. That's what I was thinking at the time, but we just kept turning wrenches, and we was always days away from catastrophic failure. He took a sip of his nutty brew. When we finally made it to the AO, area of operations, the old man took a deep breath and exhaled shakily. We had to set down on the moon because we was in bad shape. I mean, duct tape and a prayer. That was what we were running on before the landing. The strange old man sat like a master storyteller, his steaming cup in one hand and gripping the staff unconsciously tight. Gripped it while he remembered some ages long-lost memory, remembering the past with excruciating detail. After we got ahead of the problems, well, that was when the eggheads started receiving a signal from the planet. They was all kinds of excited about that. But the technicians and mechanics had questions. We got ignored by the smarter folks aboard the Korean ship. The American ship's crew weren't much help either. They wanted to investigate with orbital strikes. Kalor listened intently. He'd switched his helmet recorder on when the old man started telling his tale, but the recorder was forgotten. Too much knowledge of accurate description was being delivered over the campfire for this man to be full of it. His claim that he was emperor, though, extraordinary proof was required for a claim like that to be verified. We investigated the signal and found an Automated beacon of unknown origin, sending it out in waves. Days of looking at the thing, and the best the science team came up with, it wasn't human tech. The old man that called himself the Emperor smiled. I could have told him that just by looking at it. The thing was 20 feet tall and 1 foot wide. We found our first monolith. The old man continued, taking another sip. That's what started the war. The Barzan waited 10 years. Their colony ship was 20 light years away, and they slipped into our colony system with those nasty FTL springs. They took everything. We lost all our records, navigation information, and the Korean tech that the eggheads used to launch new research projects. All of it was stolen by the Barzan, followed by 1,000 years of war. The old man looked into the fire, remembering it all. He looked older somehow, like the story had aged him another 1,000 years. How old are you? Kaylor asked the first question he had thought of. Older than the dynasty, the old man said. I'm the guy that set the first foot on the moon in Tau Ceti off the Ark. You're the first guy to set foot on old Earth in almost 1,500 years. Welcome home, young man. The end of chapter 1.
All right. I'm going to start with, and no smoke here. That was outstanding. I can't think of anything that I could meaningfully criticize, and that's worthless because that's what you need. But that was good. Also, just side note, your voice acting and your character, like that's so many authors don't have that confidence to read how you're reading. So what that tells me about your writing is that you own these characters. You know how to speak for them. Let's go through it what from the top to the bottom. You start off in really nice tense stuff. We're clearly aware this is a crashing spaceship. I think people love those kind of scenes. Then you start lore dropping. You get this really interesting guy. He lore drops. And like I was talking about before, you brought that lore forward and closed out the chapter that way. What I would ask everybody who just listened to that to do is give a thumbs up in the comments if you go forward to chapter 2 on this. Chapter 1 inside Amazon is usually going to be a free sample. The Amazon First Look, they let people read it. It could be an audiobook sample. From what you just did right there, I think you'd reel anybody in who reads, this feels like sci-fi post-apocalyptic.
So the idea for the old man actually came from the scene with EXO in the bar,
right?
Where the old man gustily drinking his whatever it was that he ordered is telling EXO about the Galaxy's Edge. I think it's the epilogue.
Yes, the epilogue. It's the epilogue of Legionnaire, and then it came back in the most recent book. Yeah, and was told.
I'm gonna have to buy the book. Yeah, that scene kind of inspired the old man telling the story.
Yeah, and you fleshed out both characters. I feel like we're gonna ride with these characters for a while. You've got the old man, been there, done that, and then you've got the young guy who is on his hero's journey, and he's an adventurer. I didn't really detect any mistakes. The tech was all good, and that's great because in your real life, you are a tradesman, so you don't have to make, like, your writing feels real. Like when you talk about interfacing with machinery, your writing feels real. I think that's a really cool thing that James Cameron brings to his filmmaking, because he was a truck driver. And you could tell that that's like a real guy, as opposed to somebody who's only ever sat in a classroom, or read a book and doesn't like. So like, you using technology feels really grounded and real. It's not fake. You didn't have to go into like, he touched the turbo, the turbo vacuum collator. It's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Tech has to feel good. You pulled off some, like, again, like what I really like is you threw the lore in there, but then you paid it off at the end of the chapter. So as you can see, you're getting thumbs ups, and that's all you can ever ask for as a writer, is that they go to the next chapter. Writers who assume that because someone bought a book, they're just going to read the whole book and they don't have to try hard. You have to fight for every page. You have to fight for every chapter. And I think most people would finish that chapter if it was 11:30 at night, and they'd read another chapter. And that's the best way. So I'll try to develop a few more thoughts as I think about it. When we did this, I said, well, I don't just want to blow smoke and say, good job, you did good, you tried hard, attaboy, keep going. I wanted to find something meaningful so that you could apply it. But I honestly can't say that I can. I think that's outstanding. If you write a whole book like that, you're going to do great.
I could do a little bit more of showing and not telling. The grammar is, well, it's a rough draft. It's going to be ugly every time. But
yeah, you're going to work with an editor like Lauren, or somebody that you pick, and they're going to fall. But like, grammar doesn't mean anything. Honestly, I'm going to, okay, everybody can lose their minds. Audio books are the biggest seller now. If a book reads like normal people talking, it's more likely to do well. Have you ever listened to highfalutin nerds talk? It's almost incomprehensible. No one talks like that. I always when I first started writing, everybody would get after me for using contractions. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how people talk. They talk with contractions. They don't say, I would not. They say, I wouldn't.
Right.
That's, and so now that books are so often being reproduced in audio, and I think, AI is going to make that even more. And I think that there's probably going to be a new book feature that's more live inside of X when X gets going. And I know that Elon's talked about wanting to go in this direction with literature. Books are going to have to sound real and look real. And that doesn't necessarily mean that grammar is a big thing. I didn't hear anything glaring in there. And here's the other thing. A lot of the times I write grammar badly. I'm writing an old scout right now who's with the main hero. He don't talk right. He'll ask like, what that guy done wrong? He's just that guy, those kind of guys.
Yep.
If I start suddenly using grammar with that guy, he doesn't sound like that guy.
Yeah.
So I didn't detect anything. Listen, I set out to find something to help you with. I don't have anything. That's outstanding.
Yeah. That's what I got.
How do you feel about it right now?
I am my own best worst critic. I think I used the word pod too many times. But aside from that, I feel good. I feel like that's a short kind of, after it gets flushed out, kind of short, choppy first chapter. It drops some stuff that people might. It's like, oh well, what was the Battle of the Twins, or what are these?
Exactly. I want to know about that.
What's this old man talking about? And chapter 2. Do
you know where the story ends?
Yes.
Do you know what happens between here and there?
Kind of.
Perfect. Nope, that's perfect. I only ask of myself that I know where the story begins and ends. And then the fun is connecting those 2 points.
I think it was
Fun
Neil
is
Gaiman.
running from an AC perspective and eating. The fun is connecting the pipes to see if it works.
Yeah. I think it was Neil Gaiman. I might have gotten the name wrong, but I heard an author say that the job that you need to know the beginning and you need to know the end, and then you have fun connecting the two, and then the job of the first edit is making the reader believe you knew what you were doing the whole time.
Exactly. That's I've heard Neil Gaiman say that, and it's a Gaiman, however he wants to pronounce his name. Stephen King has said a version of that. It's spot on. Like, I mean, people like to call that pantser. I just call it like, I'm just having fun writing a book. But I think it's critical to know where it's got to go. I think that if you're trying to find the ending as you go, you're more likely to get lost. You know, yes, sometimes we like to just drive down country roads, but also sometimes we go, okay, I'm heading to Vegas. You know, I'm gonna get there, and that's, you kind of got to know, especially in a book, where it's going to go. Now, the fun thing about having written it once is now you know where it's going. So when you go back and rewrite the book, weird things start to happen. You get to points where you're like, oh, well, I know what's going to happen here. I can improve this based on what I know what's going to happen. So congratulations, man. That was great. And thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, all right.
I've had this on my calendar.
When you want to do chapter 2, come on back.
All right, you're going to have to pin me down for a date. I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Okay. So last time we gave you 6 months, right?
No.
So now we'll give you 3. We'll give you 3 months. So it's August now. So we'll give you August, and we'll give you September, and then we'll give you October, and we'll do it. Let's see. Let's go to October.
I don't need 3 months. I can do it, and we'll call it. How about we call it 2 months?
Okay, 2 months. Let's do it on September 28th.
September 28th.
Mark it down.
I can never find a pen when I want to. There's paper everywhere.
September 28th.
Paintbrush. That's not.
Hey, everybody. He threw down the standard. If you want to come on and try it out, I'm telling you, I'm going to find something to rip it apart just to help you. I'm not going to tell you you did great and blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, with Dave, you guys heard, am I wrong? Did you hear anything? You know, if you caught something I didn't.
Somebody had to hear something.
Yeah, put it in the comments so you can help him.
So far, everyone loved it.
But I feel worthless because I don't have anything to criticize. All right, boss. We'll see you on September 28th. Congratulations.
September 28th it'll be.
Right. All right. Unless anybody else has a question, we will go ahead and wrap it up for the night. But what you can see there is that guy has, I could see the podcasts, you know, the shows that we've done that he listened to. I could see the things that he applied. It was outstanding, and it's great, you know, and it's a lot of fun, and it feels good, and you can tell, like, it feels good to share your work with people, and it's absolutely vital that we do that right now, because we're living in an age where it's TikTok and it's Instagram, and people are trying to say no one reads anymore. But that's just not true. There are people out at book fairs this weekend, in buses, little book buses. There are writers scribbling on indie stuff and everything like that. We are in a kind of dark ages right now. And in the dark ages, it was the Latin monks who kept the art of writing and reading alive in the Bible. And eventually society restarted again. And I feel like us indie authors, to an extent, are like that. And it's vital that we just get in there and we write. Thank you, Earl. It was great to see you tonight. The Medusa and I see you. Thank you. These kids can't just watch, and these people can't just watch videos and doom scroll. It's destroying them. You need a good story. You need an adventure. You need a hero. You need something to take your mind off of things. And that's what we writers do. We don't cure cancer, but we do give you a break from it. You know, we don't cure life, but we give you a chance to just be a kid again and enjoy life, or just get your mind off your stuff. And so I don't think a lot of people are writing much anymore, because a lot of people were writing for money. And I think that if you're willing to do what Dave did and sit down and write a story, you're going to entertain somebody. And in entertaining somebody, you're going to keep the flame of not just like life and happiness alive. You're going to keep the flame of civilization alive. You know, as Chipperattle just said, someone needs to be creating imagination fuel, so that when we start using our imaginations again, we'll have a society. We have this AI thing. It's trying to steal that from us. The tech bros are trying to steal that from us. The corporations and the government are trying to tell us to behave and stay at home, you know, and all the things, you know, don't think for yourself. We'll think for you. Well, reading is the ultimate act of rebellion. It's the ultimate act of thinking. And so I don't mean to put like a lot on you as writers, but I am just saying, like, there's a reason why you write, and you help people more than you know. So it's worth doing. And that is the podcast or the show. I'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you so much.